What happens when one of the world's biggest stars doesn't need a stage, a microphone, or thousands of screaming fans to make the entire world stop and look? What happens when Jin simply puts on a white shirt, wears a few pieces of jewelry, closes his eyes, and suddenly the atmosphere feels completely different? Because this time, BTS Jin wasn't standing beneath enormous concert lights. He wasn't holding a microphone. He wasn't performing choreography. He wasn't even saying a single word. And yet, somehow, he managed to create the kind of moment that fans couldn't stop talking about. On August 13th, Jin shared several photographs from his latest Fred jewelry pictorial on Instagram. And almost immediately, the reaction began spreading far beyond the photographs themselves. Fans weren't simply looking at jewelry. They were looking at Jin. And perhaps that is exactly what made these images so powerful. There was something almost unreal about seeing him in this setting. The man who can command an entire stadium with a single expression was suddenly presented in an environment of quiet luxury. No overwhelming effects, no complicated styling, no need to hide behind anything. Just Jin, his face, his presence, and the jewelry. As Fred's global ambassador, Jin appeared wearing a necklace, a ring, and a bracelet, each piece carefully incorporated into his look. But what immediately stood out was the way Jin wore them. The jewelry didn't seem to be wearing him. He was wearing the jewelry. And that distinction matters. Luxury campaigns often rely on dramatic poses, elaborate locations, and extravagant styling. But Jin's photographs created something more intimate. He looked comfortable, confident, relaxed, almost as if the camera had simply caught him in a private moment. In one of the photographs, Jin wore a crisp white shirt while subtly adjusting his position and changing the angle of his pose. It sounds simple, but that simplicity was precisely what made the image so striking. The white shirt created a clean, timeless feeling. The jewelry added refinement, and Jin's features became the natural focal point. There was no need to overload the frame. Everything seemed to revolve around one idea. Elegance doesn't always have to be loud. Sometimes, elegance is simply knowing exactly when to do less, and Jin seemed to understand that perfectly. But then came another image that completely changed the mood. Jin appeared wearing a soft beige knit sweater. His eyes were closed. The atmosphere around him felt warm, peaceful, and almost dreamlike. And suddenly, the powerful superstar we know from stadium stages seemed to disappear for a moment. In his place was someone much quieter, someone gentle, someone almost unreachable. It felt like looking through a window into a completely different side of Jin. And this is where the pictorial became more than just a fashion shoot. Because fans have spent years watching Jin grow. They have seen him as a young BTS member standing on stages that seemed impossibly large. They watched him transform from an idol known for his humor and bright personality into an artist capable of carrying enormous emotional moments on his own. They have watched him perform under pressure. They have watched him smile through exhaustion. They have watched him return to the stage again and again. And now, seeing him in these photographs creates a different emotion. There is maturity in his appearance. There is calmness. There is confidence. But there is also something strangely nostalgic. Because the man in these photographs is still Jin. The same Jin who jokes with the members. The same Jin who makes fans laugh. The same Jin who can suddenly become incredibly serious when he performs. But now, there is another layer. A more refined, mature, almost cinematic side of him. And fans immediately recognized it. The reaction wasn't limited to one country. On X, formerly known as Twitter, phrases related to Jin's Fred and Ellie Korea photo shoot appeared among real-time trends in the United States and other countries. That international reaction reveals something important. Jin doesn't need to explain the image. The photograph speaks for itself. A fan in one country can look at the picture and immediately understand the mood. Another fan thousands of kilometers away can see the same photograph and feel something completely different. Maybe admiration, maybe excitement, maybe nostalgia, maybe simply the feeling of thinking, how is this the same person who was just standing on a massive stage? And that's what makes Jin so fascinating. He has always been capable of switching between completely different energies. On stage, he can be powerful. In interviews, he can be playful. With BTS, he can be chaotic and funny. With ARMY, he can be warm and affectionate. And in this pictorial, he becomes elegant, quiet, almost royal, which brings us to the nickname that fans have been giving him, Prince Fred. At first, it sounds like a cute nickname created for a jewelry campaign, but look closely at the photographs, and suddenly the description feels surprisingly accurate. There is something princely about the styling, the white shirt, the jewelry, the calm expression, the controlled posture, the understated luxury, and especially the confidence. He doesn't look like someone trying to convince the world that he belongs in luxury fashion. He looks like someone who already knows he belongs there. And perhaps that confidence comes from experience. Jin has spent years standing in front of cameras, years performing for enormous audiences, years being photographed from every possible angle, years learning exactly how much of himself to reveal. So when he stands in front of a camera now, there is a remarkable sense of control. He doesn't need an exaggerated expression. He doesn't need a complicated pose. A slight turn of the head can be enough. A closed eye can be enough. A relaxed hand can be enough. And somehow, the image becomes unforgettable. But there is an even deeper emotional element to this particular moment. Jin is not experiencing this success in isolation. Behind every luxury campaign, every international trend, and every breathtaking photograph is a much longer story. There were years when he was simply one member of a group, trying to find its place. Years of practice, years of uncertainty, years of traveling, years of performing in smaller venues, before eventually standing in front of crowds numbering in the tens of thousands. And now, years later, the same Jin is appearing as a global ambassador for an internationally recognized luxury jewelry house. That's quite a journey. And perhaps that's why photographs like these can feel emotional to longtime fans. They aren't just seeing a handsome man in expensive jewelry, they're seeing how far he has come. The image becomes a quiet reminder of the journey behind the person in front of the camera. And there is something beautiful about the fact that he doesn't have to look back and explain any of it. The photographs simply exist, and fans can fill in the story themselves. From trainee days to BTS, from packed arenas to solo activities, from military service and his return to international stages, and now luxury campaigns that are attracting attention around the world. Every chapter has added something to the person we see today. And that may be why the beige sweater photograph feels particularly emotional. There is no obvious performance in that image. His eyes are closed. His expression is peaceful. And for a moment, it almost feels like Jin isn't performing at all. He is simply existing. And perhaps fans appreciate that more than we realize. Because celebrities are constantly expected to perform, to smile, to pose, to entertain, to look perfect. But in this photograph, Jin seems completely at ease. His eyes are closed, his expression is soft, and the entire scene feels like a pause, a breath between enormous moments. And that makes the timing especially interesting. Because while these elegant photographs were capturing the world's attention, Jin was also preparing for another massive chapter with BTS. According to the article, BTS is scheduled to continue its world tour with performances at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas on August 16th and 17th in Korean Standard Time. Think about that contrast. On one side, there is Jin in a quiet Paris-inspired setting. Soft beige knitwear, eyes closed, luxury jewelry, silence. And on the other side, a gigantic stadium, thousands upon thousands of fans, bright lights, massive screens, music shaking the venue, and Jin standing in the middle of it all. That contrast almost feels poetic. The same person can exist in both worlds. He can be the quiet figure in a sophisticated jewelry campaign, and moments later he can become the performer commanding an enormous stadium. He can be Prince Fred, and he can still be worldwide handsome. He can be elegant, he can be funny, he can be gentle, he can be powerful. And somehow, none of those identities cancel each other out. They complete each other. That is probably why Jin's presence remains so captivating. He doesn't seem trapped inside one image. He keeps revealing another side. And just when fans think they understand the current version of him, another photograph, another performance, or another moment comes along and changes the picture. This Fred campaign is another example. At first glance, it is simply a luxury jewelry photo shoot. But look a little closer. It is also a portrait of maturity, a portrait of confidence, a portrait of someone who has become comfortable enough in his own identity that he no longer needs to prove anything. And perhaps that's the most attractive quality of all. Because true elegance doesn't come from the price of a necklace. It doesn't come from a designer label. It doesn't come from a beautiful location. It comes from the person wearing it. And Jin seems to understand that instinctively. The jewelry is beautiful. The setting is beautiful. The clothes are beautiful. But ultimately, people aren't sharing these photographs simply because of the accessories. They're sharing them because Jin makes the entire image feel alive. One subtle expression can change the mood. One small movement can create a completely different atmosphere. One photograph can make fans laugh. Another can make them stare silently at the screen. And another can make them wonder how someone can look so different without changing anything dramatic. That is the power of his presence. And perhaps the phrase Prince Fred isn't just about looking like royalty. Maybe it's about the atmosphere Jin creates. A prince doesn't always need a crown. Sometimes all he needs is confidence. Sometimes he needs nothing more than a quiet room and a camera. And sometimes he simply needs to close his eyes. Meanwhile, the world watches. And that is exactly what happened. The photographs traveled across social media. Fans reacted. International trends appeared. And once again, Jin found himself at the center of global attention without even stepping onto a stage. But this story doesn't end with the photo shoot. In fact, it feels like the photographs are only the calm before another storm, because Jin is heading back into the stadium lights. The quiet elegance of the Fred campaign will soon give way to the enormous energy of BTS's world tour. And that transition is perhaps the most exciting part. Imagine seeing the man from the beige sweater photograph suddenly standing beneath thousands of lights. The calm expression replaced by the intensity of a live performance. The quiet room replaced by a roaring stadium. The delicate jewelry replaced by a microphone. The closed eyes replaced by a powerful gaze toward the audience. It's the same Jin. But somehow it feels like two completely different worlds. And that's what makes his journey so fascinating. He has reached a point where he can move naturally between luxury fashion, solo artistry, global campaigns, and enormous BTS performances. Yet underneath all of it is still the Jin that fans recognize. The person who smiles. The person who jokes. The person who sometimes surprises everyone with his sincerity. The person who can turn an ordinary moment into something unforgettable. Maybe that's why this particular pictorial feels so special. It doesn't show Jin trying to become someone else. It shows Jin becoming more comfortable with every version of himself. The superstar, the artist, the ambassador, the performer, the gentleman, the playful member of BTS. And now, Prince Fred. So the next time you see one of these photographs, don't just look at the necklace. Don't just look at the bracelet. Don't just look at the ring. Look at the person wearing them. Look at the calm confidence. Look at the maturity. Look at the journey behind that expression. Because there was a time when Jin was simply dreaming of standing on the biggest stages in the world. Now he can stand in front of a camera wearing luxury jewelry, say nothing at all, and still make the entire world pay attention. And perhaps that is the most beautiful part of this chapter. He doesn't have to chase the spotlight anymore. The spotlight seems to find him. From a quiet, Paris-inspired photograph to the roaring lights of AT&T Stadium, from Fred's elegant jewelry to BTS's massive world tour, Jin continues to prove that there is no single version of him. There is only Jin, and somehow every version becomes unforgettable. So as Prince Fred captures the world's attention with elegance, one thing is already clear. The photographs may have been quiet, but the reaction was anything but. And if this is what Jin looks like when he simply closes his eyes and poses for a camera, just imagine what happens when he opens his eyes, steps onto that stage, and thousands of fans scream his name.